Welcome back to the Traders Network. I'm Michael Yorba, your host, broadcasting to you live from the Dallas KFXR 1190 AM iHeartMedia studios and worldwide through yorbamedia.com. All right, I'm joined with Ed Baxter. He is the president of Bison Creek Capital, and he's got a lot of conversation we can have about crowdfunding. It's taking the world by storm for capital formation, but we've got to be careful out there what kind of partners that we're getting in with. We're going to talk about that in this segment. We've got to be careful about what is a successful or what makes a successful campaign, because you don't want to get started and then fall on your face with this stuff, and having the right guidance in this crowdfunding sector, because it's still a little bit the Wild West, right, Ed?
I think it's very much the Wild West. It's one of those places where, again, as we said in the previous segment, it needed to be regulated. It was already out there. It was wild. There were a lot of people looking for ways to fund different projects, and you had to have some type of way to kind of regulate it to protect the investing public, and I think that's what the Jobs Act did. The biggest thing we have to recognize as far as crowdfunding is concerned is that it's not a magic money box. There is a process. There's a methodology which makes it successful or unsuccessful.
Now let's get into that, because everybody wants to know what's the secret recipe for getting my company up on a platform and making it go and getting the money I need to go and take my idea and turn it into a business.
The biggest thing to do is research the landscape of all the different crowdfunding sites out there, and it's helpful to have someone who already knows which ones accept your particular type of project and why your project may or may not be successful on a particular site. If you're raising money for a biotech company, probably don't want to use Kickstarter. If you're raising money for a campaign to maybe do your next album, you need $3,000, then you might want to use Kickstarter.
Okay, all right. Now you brought up some points here. There's different sites for different types of investments, and I'm talking about levels and then market sectors. Give me some feeling for how somebody goes about finding their way through the jungle on this one.
The biggest thing you can do, again, is you can use the internet to search those sites, or you can speak to someone who's had experience talking to the people who actually own those sites and getting a feel for the type of inventory from an investment standpoint they're looking for, because they're not all created equal.
Well, here's the question I've got. I want to meet some people who have been through the crowdfunding process and actually got the money, not just the company that's receiving the money, but the investor that's putting the money in, because most of these companies are illiquid. Yes, great, brilliant, you got a cure for cancer, but how do I get my money back?
Well, whenever you invest in a crowdfunding platform, as we mentioned before, as far as the type of offering that you have, whether it's a private placement, whether it's a 506C, 506B, regardless of what regulation you use to do it, the documents that you use to do it determine what the return is and how that return is given to those investors, just like any other particular project, especially moving into the business realm. Not all crowdfunding projects are specifically for equity that has no real end going forward.
Okay, so therein lies really that's the rub. We got to figure out how this industry can categorize itself, because right now it's kind of the Wild West. You got to hunt and pick. I mean, you're looking for a needle in a hayfield on how do I find the right crowdfunding platform to fit my need. There's no I haven't seen a directory out there, and I've looked through it. Right?
Well, there's kind of directories out there, and there's things that aren't necessarily that useful. I would say it's kind of like a farm. You have to have the guy that knows how to drive the tractor to make sure that he understands how to cultivate the area that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And I think a big part of it is solving that information gap, and that's what we try to do for the customers that come to us to ask us about crowdfunding.
All right, let's talk about the right partner, because that's really important. We've got about 7-8 minutes left, and we got all kinds of time to dive into this and tear it up. Right partners. Say I got an oil deal. Dallas is big on oil deals. They've been private deals. There's probably 3,000 oil companies in Dallas where they've got anywhere from 2 to maybe 30 people working at these smaller independent oil companies, which is where most of the oil is found. It's not just the big guys. And now they can take a private deal and go out to a crowdfunding platform and raise money, right?
That is correct. Bison Creek has a relationship with an entity that actually does that, and we've had a pretty good time with them so far. In the oil and gas industry, it's difficult to raise capital when you're below $50 million. but there are a large number of oil and gas and exploration companies are actually in that area. So what crowdfunding does for them is it equalizes the playing field, and they go directly to people who are interested in their project in lieu of going to people who might be interested in a project about something other than energy.
Right.
So the idea is specialization, finding the specialization, and making it work for your project.
Okay, so let's talk about that specialization. I've had companies that have been on the show. They do biotech, they do robot technology, and all of these companies have gone through the normal process of taking their company, either buying a shell that's got a stock symbol on, connected to it, and then raising money through selling equity through private equity companies, venture capital companies, investment bankers, things of that nature. Are we going to start seeing an adjunct? I mean, is Bloomberg going to start, having their own crowdfunding site too?
It's unlikely that the big media companies will necessarily be involved in crowdfunding. However, what they will do is invest in crowdfunding sites like the founders of Skype did in one of the sites we have here. You have a lot of big money behind a lot of these deals, specifically for the purpose of recognizing that at some point they'll monetize it just from the data and the analytics associated with going through that process. So I don't necessarily think there'll be a giant group of people other than what we see, because it's really an entrepreneurial form in itself.
Right. So Goldman Sachs is not going to have a crowdfunding division.
Goldman Sachs probably wouldn't, but they would have their private equity people invest in crowdfunding sites.
So they'd maybe even buy one, so they get both ends of the. They can.
They would. It only makes sense because it becomes another form of distribution form, and that's what broker dealers are built for, is distribution.
Okay. All right. So that's what I was kind of curious. So over the next several years, I'm seeing this evolve. We can see media companies, because they definitely once you get into a deal or come to the table with a deal, you got to promote it. I mean, you got to promote it to buy the product, whether it's soup spoons or it's robots, right?
Right. What we try to do is take a holistic approach to this process. There's media involved, whether it's press releases, whether it's radio interviews, whether it's television. There's an involvement when it comes to trade shows. There's also involvement when it comes to SEO, where you're looking to optimize your message out in the internet world. Taking a holistic approach to the crowdfunding campaign, because that's exactly what it is. It's a campaign, helps bring more success to the process, and we try to help people get there.
Okay, all right. So this is where I'm going with this. I'm talking to one of the top 3 crowdfunding companies just yesterday, and they're like, "We're all about TV." I think everybody saw Shark Tank and thought, "Oh, that's going to be me." But what you just said is really hits the nail on the head. It's a campaign. It's a overall planned, multifaceted strategy with the crowdfunding platforms as well as the companies that are going to the platforms to get money. Is that right? Is that what I'm getting here?
That would be correct.
So we're going to see this thing evolve where it's multifaceted. We've probably got maybe soon probably a crowdfunding show to compete with the Shark Tank. Obviously, radio's the lowest. Digital marketing is probably the lowest barrier to penetration, because they're all about digital marketing. And then the rest of these other mediums kick in: radio, TV, and digital marketing. Is that where you see the orchestration coming in?
Well, from taking a holistic approach, I believe that when you think about media and how you drive media and how you drive action to your particular site or your particular campaign, what you want is as many impressions as you can get. Those impressions are the ones that give people the impetus to act going forward on the transaction that you're trying to complete. That's ultimately what you're trying to do is build in the mind of the consumer an opportunity they may not have thought of before, in the same way that you would if you're building a brand and a product.
Yeah, well, you said something the other day that really hit home. It's great to have a crowdfunding site, but where's the crowd?
Exactly.
So we're going to have to develop more promotion, more publicity for the crowdfunding portals in every means possible in order to develop a bigger crowd. It's not just the first 3 or 4 or 5 guys to the, like Microsoft has got, pretty much a monopoly of all the operating systems. Right?
Right.
And Apple, for the most part, has got a lion's share of all the phones that are out there. I mean, there's, you have a bunch of them, but I mean, and at one point, Xerox had the monopoly on copy machines. So I can't see that the crowdfunding site is ever going to go like that.
I think that crowdfunding in general it's too democratized for that. There'll always be someone with a new idea about how to crowdfund a particular transaction. I think that what has to happen is those that are the best capitalized will be the ones that do the best, just like you do in any particular industry, and that's really what you're looking for. But even though you may be the best capitalized crowdfund site, you may not be the best site for the purpose of my particular project.
So it all boils down to marketing.
It does. It boils on to marketing, and I'm a country boy at heart, so I always like to shoot with a rifle instead of a shotgun. I don't like to waste a bunch of shells when I'm going out there looking for money. So I think that it's important to understand that you have to take a more concise approach to how you do this.
Right. And so part and parcel with getting the money you want from a crowdfunding site, you're going to have to come up with a fairly well-developed marketing plan. Don't just think that you're going to show up on a crowdfunding site and get rich. This is not going to happen.
No, there is no magic money machine, and you'd have to be very concise and precise in how you do it.
All right, Ed, thanks for being on the show. Stick around because you brought a guest, John Lowry, going to be on the show next segment, right?
Right.
All right. Now, what's John do?
John is the CEO of Whole Life Companies, and they're a developer of active adult communities.
All right. We'll be right back on the other side of this break with John Lowry, president of Whole Life Companies, and Ed Baxter. He's going to help me out with this interview. We'll be right back.